With this building, we really wanted to make the physical carrier library an instantiation of that intellectual crossroads that any library system always is, but maybe particularly a library system like that at JMU.
Welcome to Being the Change, the official podcast of James Madison University, brought to you by Madison Magazine. Each episode brings to you stories of how members of the JMU community combine intellect with action to live lives of purpose and meaning. That's Being the Change.
What's up, JMU? Andy Perrine here for Being the Change. Today, I have to admit, before we get into this topic about the carrier library renovations, that I will be completely unobjective in this inquiry, because some of my fondest memories as an alumnus are of times I spent in carrier library. So I just want to get that out of the way up front. So if I gush, you'll know why. We've got three guests with us today to talk about the carrier library renovation and the changing role of libraries on college campuses. Bethany Nowviskie, who is the Dean of the Libraries and the Chief Academic Technology Officer for JMU. Hello, Bethany.
Hi, Andy.
Andrew Strack, who's Director of Media Production and Makerspace Services at JMU Libraries.
Good morning.
And also Kelly Miller-Martin, who is Director of Facilities Operations for the libraries. Kelly.
Good morning.
Good morning. And we've got a lot to talk about, but I'm going to go right to Kelly, because if I try to be an advocate for the listeners of Being the Change, and I'm really curious as a person who cares about carrier library, about the logistics of moving a collection out and then back in. I mean, you've got the Dewey Decimal System. I mean, we all know how that works.
No.
No. The Dewey Decimal System was one of my favorite things as a kid. But just how you pack a box with the thought of how you unpack it is got to be something that is tremendously challenging. So tell us a little bit about the logistics behind moving the carrier collection out with the thought of moving it back in.
Sure. The short answer is we actually hired experts to help us. So we contracted with a company that is their bread and butter is moving library collections. A lot of the planning that we did on our side involved maintaining access to those collections as we moved what we could ahead of the closure of carrier library, and really understanding how we could lean into this moment to make sure that our collections were servable and in the right space for our community. So there were some items that moved over to Rose ahead of the closure of carrier, right, and they're still here.
And we're in Rose Library. That's why she said here.
Yes, thank you. And then we were really grateful to have space available on campus to keep the large amount of the collections that would move back into carrier library.
And which space was that?
That is the hub, or D-Hub as it was previously known.
And that was built on X-Lot, for those of you who are my age who may remember parking in X-Lot. And it was built as a swing space while we renovated D-Hall. And so it was such a terrific structure, we decided to keep it. It was designed to be a temporary structure, but so it was really fortunate that that place still existed for this renovation.
Yes, and a lot of the planning that we did ahead of the actual physical move of the books was to figure out not only how we could fit the books in there, but how we could use shelving that existed in carrier library to sustain that interim storage of all those books.
Because you're going to need to build new ones anyway.
Correct.
Exactly. Well, and also one of the main driving forces behind your logistical objectives was, what are the students going to do while carrier is being renovated?
Yes.
And so
yes.
What are they doing?
They are finding their spaces, and they're still taking advantage of all of our great library services. So we've had a lot of really proactive and wonderful communication through our website, thanks to our communications and outreach team.
Which is a fine team, I might add.
They're wonderful. There was a lot of effort that went into helping students understand where they could find their next favorite study space over this interim period. And Rose Library is still here and going strong.
It is.
So we also have, that was another one of our goals, as we knew we needed to make some changes to take Carrier offline in the interim. We didn't want to take away space in Rose Library. So we had a hefty puzzle to solve in terms of keeping everything that we needed available right here in Rose. But we didn't just wall up space and tuck a bunch of Carrier stuff here. We wanted to keep this space available for everyone.
I think the title of this podcast is now Hefty Puzzle.
Andy, you're talking to the logistics queen, Kelly Miller Martin.
I know.
So really, it wasn't just the collections, that puzzle of the collections that we had to manage. It was all of the furnishings and equipment in the building. We had 100 people had their full-time offices in Carrier Library.
Wow.
And so working with our campus partners to find alternate spaces during the renovation for all of those folks. So many different services offered out of that building. So we had to launch new temporary service points in a variety of places around campus.
Well, an alumni might not know just how much you serve faculty as well as students.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. It's the whole university community. So Kelly's being a little too modest. All of her work, she actually helped us with cost avoidance of over $1 million for JMU, just in the smarts of the logistics of the move.
What were some of the big items on cost avoidance?
Kelly, do you want to talk?
So, sure. I talked about moving the collection shelves into the hub, and that was an excellent example of some cost savings, where we took the shelving before Carrier was closed as the books were moved in a very strategic way. And we moved about 900 shelving units.
Which would have gone to the landfill otherwise.
Or surplus. Or been repurposed, which was another part of our goal. We really wanted to try to keep as much of the items that came out of Carrier out of the waste stream.
Right.
So we moved just over 900 pieces of shelving, and that was roughly about $375,000 in cost avoidance.
That's terrific.
Yeah.
And then Kelly mentioned the how students are finding study spaces all over campus, in part through a new layer on the campus map specifically about study spaces that we collaborated with a bunch of units across campus to put together. But Carrier furnishings went into the augmentation of spaces all over campus too.
For both our students, as Bethany has just described, and for our staff. So we have staff in a variety of spaces on campus right now, and we repurposed 1,000 pieces of Carrier furniture to outfit those offices. And all in, we moved 3,000 pieces of furniture out of that building into repurposed spaces on campus.
Well,
We're so proud of what we were able to accomplish. And
sounds like you've got the hefty puzzle half done.
it was spectacular. and we could not have done it without the help of JMU Moving Services. We also had a really tight window. So one of the primary goals when we set out to plan for the move, I should say it took us a year to plan. Half of that year was responsive implementation, where we were actually executing the earliest phases as we were planning the later phases. So
all with the mind to moving back in.
correct.
Right.
So what can I relocate, and I know it can stay there when I move it, or what can I relocate, but I know that the last book out has to be the first book back in.
Right.
So again, we leveraged expertise where we could, but we also tried to be really smart about how we staggered and scaffolded all the moves.
Well, and for those of you who don't work at JMU, you'll not know that we say, who work here, that JMU stands for Just Moved Us. So we're all very familiar with JMU Moving Services. They're a plucky group. Well, I'd like to talk now about the timing of this renovation. And it's happening at a time of evolution for libraries on college campuses. So it's really opportune that it's happening, because you can make some new decisions about design, about what is in the library. And Bethany, I'd love to hear, you're somewhat of a renowned librarian. I've heard from some of my colleagues in other universities, and we'd love to hear from you your vision of how the new Carrier suits this changing role of libraries.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, this was an amazing kind of once in a lifetime opportunity for all of us to design a space that really suits the library system here at JMU and the variety of offerings that it makes to, as we were saying before, to the entire community, to our students, to our faculty, to JMU staff, to Valley community members, right? And so with this building, we really wanted to make the physical carrier library an instantiation of that intellectual crossroads that any library system always is, but maybe particularly a library system like that at JMU, where we have charged not only of the kind of resource provision that you think of when you think of a library, but also the educational technology enterprise and the academic technology enterprise, the research technology enterprise at JMU. So we bring all of those things under the same roof conceptually in our library's organization. And how would we respond to the opportunity to sort of purpose design that building and that roof? So the building itself really is going to be a visible crossroads. So we're super excited about welcoming big, open, new entrances, the access through the building that you can really understand and navigate both sort of through it and also up and down, and the way that light pours into the building. It's just this fantastic metaphor for the illumination that libraries, bring to their campus communities. But for us too, that concept of an intellectual crossroads, it was a chance for us to bring varied libraries teams together in service to the domains that they represent, to the faculty and students primarily that they serve, and just really make good on what is so special about the JMU libraries, so that those expansive services, that reach, and the chance to bring the expertise in alignment with the cutting edge equipment, with the purpose designed spaces. Like you couldn't have had a better chance to really elevate in a way that the libraries has in recent years and decades, like expanded its role and what it can offer and what it can do to really elevate Carrier Library as a physical representation of JMU's like ascension as a national research university, are coming on the stage in the national scene, and all of the many opportunities that our students get when they come to JMU. They touch on the libraries in some way, and we really hope that everybody is going to be able to find their space in the library, find their offering in the library that is a game changer for them.
Well, and you make the point about the timing also being consonant with our classification from a master's regional institution to a national research and doctoral institution.
Right.
So Carrier is going to be a fitting home for that intellectual, cultural crossroads that you're describing.
Absolutely, and it's I think people who come to campus are going to see it as a beacon, right? You can already see as the building is coming up when you come up Grace Street from either of the directions. Suddenly, you've got this beautiful jewel box of a library that's coming up right before you.
Well, and for our listeners, if you've not taken a look at the designs online, you just have to. Because they're absolutely stunning. You will be so proud.
Yeah, and you can see those on our renovation website. Kelly mentioned that. It's we're super proud of that work too. It's won now regional and national awards for libraries that are communicating well with their communities, and that was our goal from the get-go. So everybody should be able to easily find that website on our library homepage and explore renderings and hear more about all of the features of the new building.
And there's also some time-lapse cameras on the construction sites.
Well, yeah, and that's probably a great segue to talking with Andrew about the work that he's been doing to capture the process of the carrier renovation. So Andrew's been sort of our official photographer for the project.
And what was your biggest challenge on deciding how you're going to depict this transformation?
So it started with, how do we capture Carrier as it was in 2022, and how do we illustrate the process of the construction and renovation to our campus community and to our alumni, to staff who are curious about how the work is going. And so the construction, Kellstrom and Lee is the construction company who have been great partners in setting up the 2 cameras that are watching the site all the time, and that people can easily go and find and visit and see progress from day one all the way up to now, or see what's happened in the last week. And then I've been fortunate enough to visit the construction site on occasion to be able to photograph and document what's happening inside the building, to both help staff in the libraries who don't get a chance to do that understand how their spaces are coming along, and then also let us remember what it used to be like and how fabulous it's going to be going forward.
Right. Yeah. Remembering it is going to be as important as enjoying the new space.
Yeah, and that's going to be a really wonderful thing about the building too. We were really careful to preserve and even, augment and restore historic features of Carrier. And so Andrew was essential in capturing and helping in that project too. So even as there are new, gleaming, gorgeous spaces coming up, there's a reverence for the history of Carrier Library, for its 1930s beginning. And so the opportunity to restore our reading rooms, even to uncover some beautiful features that have been hidden for decades.
Because of drop ceilings?
Yeah.
Yeah. Andrew, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So again, the opportunity of this construction project was lined up really well with my professional interests and the tools that we have available, and that all students and faculty have available to them through the libraries. And so we've got great cameras you can check out from Equipment Loans, and then 3D scanners, which is a great tool that Bethany was alluding to, where when the construction team starts to pull down these false ceilings and finds brackets at the top of columns that are original to the 1939 building that have been covered up for decades, we can take the opportunity. At first, it was just to document these things because we're not sure whether they're going to make it all the way through. But as the plan progressed and it was clear, yes, they are going to make it through. Well, some of them have been damaged over the years. And so we can 3D scan them and then start to figure out how do we reproduce ones, new ones, to put back into the building.
That's fascinating. Yeah.
It's been an exciting part of the project.
I'd like to hear from each of you what you're most excited about in the new renovation. Bethany, why don't you go first?
Oh, go first. All right. One thing that I really love about the renovation is we had the opportunity to kind of make a case statement with this building about the connection of the oldest media to the newest, and the connection of being able to, see and touch objects of information transmission. I'm talking about books and manuscripts, right? Things like that. And to be able to think about how facilities like the makerspace that Andrew is talking about enable students to be participants in knowledge production. And so, a project like 3D scanning these hidden column capitals and brackets translates directly into, well, let's 3D print those and let's play with them, let's experiment. And so there are spaces in the building. I talked before about how great it is to be able to bring teams together, and these may be teams that have been scattered across campus, or they've been working out of spaces for many years that weren't sort of purpose built for that kind of activity. So we're going to bring the teams together, the facilities together, but also for our faculty, for our students, for our alumni, visitors, just to walk through the building. You will walk through history and you will be able to see how the book arts connect to fabrication and augmented reality. You'll be able to see how and why teaching happens in the way that it does in the variety of the spaces that we have, and that deep connection of libraries as storehouses of knowledge, but also as engines for production, right? As the archives aren't dead things; they're tools, and so we're gonna make that kind of new knowledge production not just possible because it's always been possible through our services, but visible, showcased, and in connection with its history and deep roots. So that's what really excites me.
That is very exciting, and I love the fact that you included alumni in your description of who will be excited to see it. Because one of the things about, especially Carrier Library, because Rose Library, where we are now, didn't exist for when I was a student, but that the libraries touched everybody. It didn't matter if you were a business student, a nursing student, an engineer. The library touched everybody. So this is something that all alumni are going to be very proud of.
Absolutely. And so honestly, that's another thing that I'm really excited about with the building. So we were incredibly fortunate to have the backing of the Commonwealth of Virginia for this project, right? And it is a recognition of JMU's growth and trajectory and the needs of a university to really meet, our educational mission and the important role that a library plays in that. So state funding was crucial to make this happen, but it's also been so amazing to see the outpouring of support from our alumni, how excited they are about the building. They want to come see it coming up. They're excited for when it opens and when they can finally get inside. And so many of them are talking with us about how they can bolster the work that they understand happens through the libraries. And so they're naming spaces in the new building of a variety of sizes and purposes, and they're just talking to us about how to support the mission of the library. So that's just been incredible.
Well, it's analogous to the stadium in that this library is an indication that we've reached the big leagues.
Right? Absolutely.
Andrew, what are you most excited about?
I'm most excited about the purpose-built spaces in the new building and how my department is one of those, where the makerspace is going to be at the heart of the building, and the media production suites, we're going to have 2 studios, one of them designed just for students. And that's going to be maybe the first of its kind, where it's going to be accessible to students no matter what college you're from.
So cool.
Yeah, it's going to be a great space.
That's awesome.
And it's coming
and
at
visible.
Yes.
Yeah.
Again, heart of the building,
Right.
matches up really well with preservation space, where we've got preservation on one side and the makerspace on another. And it's very easy to build the connections that Bethany was alluding to.
And as head of operations, Kelly, I know you're most excited about this coming to an end. But what are you most excited about the design and moving back in?
I am thrilled to be a part of this project. I honestly don't know what I'll do when it's done. I am most excited. So I also went to school here, and my deepest, darkest confession is I only went to Carrier twice. I know. But I got confused and I got lost, so I bailed. And I used my critical thinking and made it without it. But I'm so happy to have been working here long enough to understand how we can create a more intuitive building for our entire community. So I'm really excited to build spaces that function well, both in the ways that people pay attention to and then in the ways that they just weren't functioning on the back end in such an old building. So I think we will have just better all around operations and usability of our spaces. And they're going to be beautiful. So I'm just thrilled. I could talk for hours about how excited I am about this project.
Well, yeah. And I admitted at the opening of this podcast that I'm non-objective here, so I'm going to chime in about what I'm most excited about, and that is that there's going to be a new spectacular view on campus, because this building's pretty tall, and you're going to be able to see east and west in a way that nobody's ever seen before.
Yes, amazing views from all angles, and that's what's been so exciting for us who've had the privilege to get a hard hat tour from time to time as the building is coming up. And there's not a bad view. out of the building. And there are some that I didn't realize that you could see from this side of campus. So, you see Massanutten and the Ridgeline. You can see the whole sweep from Rose Library to King Hall. And the views from the other direction of the stadium and more are just so pretty and nice.
For me, one of the surprises as we progressed through the demolition was seeing the spaces that had been closed in with offices over the years that are open again and will be open for students. So areas in the building that were previously reading rooms that just by sheer necessity had been closed off or cut into different office boxes.
It was like a bunny warren. No wonder you got lost as a student.
Exactly. So we're seeing, we've just had a glimpse of the sight lines that students will be able to see and the open spaces that will be there to welcome them when we reopen.
Yeah, and the windows are just so beautiful. Yeah. The restored historic windows are going to be gorgeous, just wide open views. But that's a really important thing to emphasize. So I'm glad that Kelly mentioned it. We are really prioritizing open public space, and yet light, and also just the pleasure of studying and working in shared public spaces like this. So really thinking through where we were going to position staff offices, how we could restore reading rooms to their original purpose. That was crucially important to us.
Well, how elegant is it that a more open library is consonant with more open minds? And if you haven't seen the designs, you really should go look. If you just search for JMU Carrier renovation, you'll find it immediately. And I really encourage all of our Being the Change listeners to take a look. It is very exciting. And when you're back on campus, go take a look at the progress. You'll be really shocked at the wonderment of the facade on Grace Street. And then that will connect with the campus side. So it's really just stunning. And thank you so much, you three, for coming and chatting with us today. It was fun when everyone arrived for the podcast here in Rose Library. This was the first Being the Change podcast recording where I didn't have to wait for the participants at the elevator because everybody knew where we were going.
We know our way around the library.
Yes, you do. And I'd like to say, just remember, all of you listeners of Being the Change, that if you've got an idea for future episodes of this podcast, send them to us at beingthechange@jmu.edu, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening. Tune in next time to hear another story of how members of the James Madison University community are being the change. Dive deeper and consume countless other stories at jmu.edu/Madison Magazine. Go Dukes!
The Being the Change podcast was conceived by Jim Heffernan, editor of Madison Magazine, and me, Andy Perrine, head of JMU Marketing. Thanks to Jenna Polk and the team at Rose Library Studios, where the show is recorded by Steve Adderton, the guy who also captures those amazing campus drone shots you see on Instagram. Original music and episode production by Neil Perrine. All of us involved in creating Being the Change are JMU alumni, and we bleed purple. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.